Today, we're going to talk about power and how to be powerful in New World, but specifically when starting a new character, we will discuss a few things that can get you some early game power, as well as some things that you can do later in the game that can increase your power, making sure you are always able to stay on power level with content, even if you're under gear score. If you think there's anything I left out, leave a comment below. Let's jump right in. When you start the game, as a fresh, brand new character, starting in Aeternum, you will be able to choose from a variety of different archetypes. These archetypes are new, and honestly, they help set a good starting marker for new characters. They give you 2 weapons as well as some armor with an increase to attribute points according to the play style of that archetype. As soon as you start, Amazon starts you off on your way to being powerful already. After working your way through the starting area and getting into your first town, we start to get into the second stage of making your character more powerful and ensuring that as you progress through the game, you will remain powerful. We will start in the trading post screen, but be aware that any of these things I'm showing you here, you can also craft for yourself. And based on how long your server has been active, you might have to make these for yourself because inventory may be either low, very expensive, or completely out. Gathering all of these resources on your own and making them is a wonderful way to get your feet wet in New World, and I definitely recommend it. To start, we're going to talk about consumables. Potions are used for healing yourself and giving yourself mana. Tinctures are for removing corruption and the blight effect. And the next 3 sections are what we're going to talk about now. Coatings are applied to your current weapon, and they provide you with additional damage output based on a certain enemy type: human, corrupted, ancient, beast, lost, and angry earth. If you are playing against a certain type of enemy based on the area that you are at in New World, it is a good idea to come in and pick up a few of the weapon coatings in accordance with that area. Applying this to your primary weapon will give you an additional 9% damage output against corrupted for 25 minutes. Choose the weapon coating in accordance with the enemies that you are fighting and see that your damage output is greatly increased. After coatings, we will have enhancements. Enhancements provide a variety of different benefits. We have the Honing Stone, which increases your amount of damage output. We have the Proficiency Boost, which increases the amount you gather while doing trade skills. We have the Oak Flesh Balm, which increases your physical damage absorption for a limited amount of time or a certain number of times. We have an incense that increases your resistance to afflictions. And we have Gemstone Dust, which increases your absorption of elemental damages. Lastly, we have attribute bonus foods. Again, in the early part of the game, these foods may be hard to come by based on how long your server has been around. But if you are joining a server that has been in existence for quite some time, note that the cost of these foods are relatively low, but provide you with 10 additional strength for 25 minutes. As we go higher, you'll notice that they increase the amount of strength that they give you, as well as the duration of time. For this example here, we can use this specific consumable to increase our strength by 40 for 40 minutes. 43 gold to be able to increase your strength by 40 for 40 minutes. That's pretty good. The next section I want to talk about is under refined resources, cut gemstones. Adding gemstones to your gear is something I feel many people in the early part of the game overlook, and even many people in the late game might tell you it's useless. But I believe this is a wonderful thing to start doing early and get used to doing it. Again, in the early part of the game, your prices might vary based on how old your server is. For my server, tier 2 gems are very cheap. As a tank, running a Carnelian gem on your weapons is almost a requirement if you are going to keep aggro on bosses so that your team is not getting murdered. If you are running a DPS build, it is a great idea to equip some of these other gems in order to convert the amount of damage you are doing to a specific elemental type. In addition, if you don't know what to equip, when it comes to armor, equipping Onyx, if you are a melee build, is always a good idea to increase your amount of physical damage absorption. If you are a ranged player, increasing your elemental and physical damage absorption with a Malachite or a diamond gem is a good place to start. But if you find you are getting killed by a specific elemental type, search for that elemental type and equip it. Somewhere between level 20 and level 30, you should start receiving gear that has an empty socket. Equip that piece of gear and place one of those gems inside the socket to gain its benefit. To equip the gem to your gear, simply pick up the gem from your inventory and drag it over the piece of gear you wish to equip it to. If you liked this information so far, I would greatly appreciate a like and comment below on what you liked the most, or if you think I forgot something. And as always, hit that subscribe button on your way back up. Your attribute points in your attribute screen is very important to make sure that you are putting as many points as possible into your primary damage stat, but also adding points into your constitution tree to make sure that you have enough life in order to survive through the content that you are playing. I primarily play tank, but for many people I've spoken to about their damage builds, I find that around 100 constitution is about the highest you really need to go, as long as you are equipping the right armor and gems to provide you with damage mitigation, both physical and elemental. The last thing that I will talk about in order to make sure that you are optimizing your damage as much as possible is knowing the different damage types and what is weak against them. This will help you with when you are going into certain areas with certain enemies, knowing exactly which kind of damage type you should do in order to provide the most benefit. You should know that if you are going up against Angry Earth, you should try to use slashing if you can. Knowing these different damage types against the enemy types is a wonderful way to increase your damage and ensure that you are constantly seeing yellow damage marks, which means you are doing good damage against them. As a final note, I will say, make sure that you are balancing your damage output along with your defense and constitution. If you are confident in your abilities, by all means, make a glass cannon, but it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of some defense along the way to make your adventuring and leveling more enjoyable. Of course, if you have a group, especially somebody who is able to frontline for you, go all in on damage. And that's all I have for you. I've tried to keep it as simple as possible, not getting too much in the weeds on exact builds or how you should be building your character necessarily, but instead concentrating on things that everybody can control, and almost everybody should be able to obtain these things as well to increase your damage and increase your survivability. If you liked this video, you might like other videos from my New World playlist, specifically my fresh start guide on making a new character. As always, I would appreciate if you liked the video, commented below with your thoughts, and smash that subscribe button. I hope you guys have a great time in Aeternum.